Ladies and gentlemen, in a world that glorifies noise, busyness, and constant interaction, solitude is often misunderstood. We are led to believe that being alone is a sign of weakness, that silence is something to be filled, and that greatness is built through endless external validation. However, history and wisdom tell us otherwise. The greatest minds, the most profound thinkers, and the most creative souls have embraced solitude not as a punishment, but as a gateway to something far greater. Solitude is not loneliness. It is the space where the mind expands, the heart heals, and the soul awakens. In stillness there is clarity. When the distractions of the world fall away, we begin to see things as they are, not as we have been told they should be. The noise of society clouds our vision, but solitude sharpens it. It is in the quiet moments that the most revolutionary ideas are born, where the deepest truths are revealed, and where the path to mastery is paved. Being alone and feeling lonely are two entirely different experiences. Loneliness is a sense of emptiness, a yearning for connection that is unmet, a feeling of being isolated even in a crowded room. It stems from a lack of engagement with life, a craving for external validation, and a deep-seated fear of being with oneself. Solitude, on the other hand, is a conscious choice, a state of being that is embraced rather than endured. It is not about the absence of people, but about the presence of oneself. In the most profound way, when a person chooses solitude, they are not rejecting the world, but rather stepping away momentarily to gain a clearer understanding of it. In a world filled with constant chatter, distractions, and external noise, solitude provides a space where the mind can breathe, where thoughts can be observed without interruption, and where one's inner voice can finally be heard. It is in this quiet space that true self-awareness develops, allowing an individual to see beyond the superficial layers of identity shaped by societal expectations. Throughout history, some of the greatest thinkers, philosophers, artists, and visionaries have sought solitude, not because they despised company, but because they understood the immense power of stillness. When the mind is free from external influences, it begins to function at a high level. It sharpens, it focuses, and it delves into realms of creativity and insight that are otherwise inaccessible in the presence of constant noise. It is no coincidence that many scientific breakthroughs, literary masterpieces, and spiritual awakenings have occurred during periods of deep solitude. The absence of distractions allows ideas to flow freely, making space for new perspectives and deeper understanding. Yet modern society often conditions people to fear solitude. There is a widespread belief that being alone equates to being unwanted, unloved, or unsuccessful. Social media reinforces this idea, constantly feeding the need for validation through likes, comments, and interactions. People feel the pressure to always be connected, to always be in the company of others, fearing that solitude is a sign of failure. But in reality, the ability to be alone and be at peace with oneself is one of the greatest strengths a person can develop. It means that one does not rely on external factors for happiness or self-worth, but instead finds fulfillment within. Solitude offers something that no amount of social interaction can provide: self-discovery. When a person is constantly surrounded by others, their thoughts, opinions, and beliefs are influenced, often unconsciously, by those around them. They may adapt their behavior to fit in, suppress their true nature, or lose sight of what they genuinely want in life. But when one sits in solitude, they begin to see themselves clearly. They recognize their fears, their aspirations, their deepest desires. They come face to face with their mind's restless nature. And in doing so, they learn to master it rather than be controlled by it. Beyond self-awareness, solitude also nurtures emotional resilience. Many people struggle with the idea of being alone because they have never learned to be comfortable in their own presence. They seek constant engagement to distract themselves from their inner turmoil, using external activities to fill an internal void. But true strength comes from the ability to sit with one's thoughts, to observe them without judgment, and to cultivate inner stability. When a person learns to be content in solitude, they develop a sense of inner security that cannot be shaken by external circumstances. They no longer feel the need to seek approval from others, nor do they fear the loss of social connections because they have already found wholeness within themselves. In solitude, time slows down. The rush of everyday life fades, allowing one to fully engage with the present moment. There's no urgency to impress, no need to perform, no pressure to meet expectations. There is only the pure experience of being. This stillness opens the door to deep introspection, where one can question life, seek wisdom, and understand the nature of existence beyond the surface level. It is in these quiet moments that one can truly listen, not just to their own thoughts, but to the whispers of intuition, to the subtle insights that often go unnoticed in the chaos of daily life. Solitude is also a source of immense creative power. Many artists, writers, and musicians retreat into solitude to create their most meaningful work without the distractions of the world. They can dive into the depths of their imagination, giving birth to ideas that are raw, unfiltered, and uniquely their own. The creative process thrives in solitude because it allows thoughts to develop organically without the interference of external influences. Whether it is composing music, painting, writing, or inventing something new, solitude provides the mental and emotional space needed for true originality to emerge. For those on a spiritual journey, solitude is even more essential. Every great spiritual tradition recognizes the importance of spending time alone to cultivate wisdom and inner peace. Many sages, monks, and seekers have spent years in isolation, not because they wanted to escape the world, but because they sought to understand it on a deeper level. When one withdraws from the noise and distractions of daily life, they can connect with something greater than themselves. They begin to see life beyond the material, beyond the transient pleasures and sorrows, and tap into a profound state of awareness that is not dependent on anything external. Despite all these benefits, solitude requires a shift in perspective. Instead of viewing it as something to be feared, it must be embraced as an opportunity for growth. It is not about rejecting relationships or avoiding social interactions, but about recognizing the importance of balance. Just as we nourish our bodies with food and rest, our minds and souls also need periods of solitude to recharge and grow. When solitude is welcomed, it transforms from an experience of isolation into a journey of self-discovery, creativity, resilience, and ultimately, personal greatness. Throughout history, those who have left an indelible mark on the world, whether in the realms of science, art, philosophy, or spirituality, have often been individuals who embraced solitude. They did not fear walking alone, nor did they seek validation from the masses. Instead, they understood that the path to greatness is often one that requires stepping away from the ordinary, from societal expectations, and from the distractions of everyday life. It is in these moments of separation that deep insights arise, new perspectives emerge, and true originality is born. The greatest minds did not merely conform to the world around them. They transcended it. The ability to walk alone requires an immense level of inner strength. Society encourages people to stay within the comfort of the familiar, to follow well-trodden paths, and to seek approval from peers. Those who choose to break away from this norm often face criticism, resistance, and misunderstanding. But history shows that those who dare to walk alone are the very individuals who changed the course of humanity. Think of the great inventors who spent years working in isolation, refining their ideas before the world was ready to accept them. Think of the philosophers who questioned the fundamental nature of reality, often facing ridicule for their radical views. Think of the artists who detached from the expectations of society, creating works that redefined beauty, emotion, and expression. Their solitude was not a curse but a blessing, a necessary step in unlocking the full potential of their minds. Innovation and discovery are rarely born in the midst of noise and distraction. The greatest minds understand that true breakthroughs come from deep introspection, from an unwavering focus that can only be cultivated in solitude. When one is constantly surrounded by people, their thoughts are influenced by the collective opinions and beliefs of the crowd. It becomes difficult to think independently, to question deeply, and to pursue ideas that may seem unconventional. The greatest minds resist this pull of conformity. They create space for themselves to think freely, to explore without limitation, and to nurture the kind of creative vision that can reshape entire fields of knowledge. Walking alone is not merely about physical solitude. It is a mental and emotional state of self-reliance. It is the ability to trust one's own judgment even when others do not understand. Many of history's most brilliant minds were not accepted in their time. Their ideas were often met with skepticism, opposition, or outright rejection. Yet they persevered. They did not abandon their path simply because the world was not yet ready for their vision. Instead, they continued forward, often in silence, refining their work until the world caught up. This unwavering commitment to their truth is what set them apart. The burden of walking alone is not an easy one. It requires the courage to embrace uncertainty, to walk into the unknown without the reassurance of companionship or external support. It demands an unshakable belief in one's purpose, a willingness to endure solitude, and an acceptance of the challenges that come with being different. Many of the greatest minds faced loneliness not because they desired isolation, but because their depth of thought, their intensity of vision, and their relentless pursuit of truth set them apart from those around them. They did not seek to be misunderstood, but they understood that the price of extraordinary thought is often temporary alienation. Yet walking alone is not about rejecting human connection or dismissing the value of relationships. It is about understanding that the most profound work, the deepest insights, and the most revolutionary ideas often require a period of detachment from the collective. It is about recognizing that true greatness does not emerge from constantly seeking approval, but from an inner conviction that drives a person forward even in the absence of external support. It is in solitude that one cultivates a vision that is untainted by the limitations of popular opinion. It is in solitude that the mind sharpens, ideas crystallize, and wisdom deepens. Those who have walked alone have shaped the world in ways that seemed impossible at the time. Scientists who locked themselves away in their laboratories for years, tirelessly working on equations and experiments that would later change the course of human understanding. Writers who withdrew from society, pouring their deepest thoughts onto paper, creating works that would transcend time. Mystics and spiritual seekers who retreated into silence, unlocking insights into the nature of existence that continued to guide humanity. These individuals did not achieve greatness by following the crowd. They achieved it by daring to step away, by trusting their own minds, and by embracing the solitude necessary for their vision to fully unfold. The world often resists change, and those who think differently are frequently met with skepticism, but the greatest minds do not seek approval. They seek truth. They are not deterred by the fear of rejection, nor do they allow the judgments of others to dictate their path. Instead, they remain steadfast, allowing their solitude to fuel their brilliance rather than diminish it. They understand that true mastery requires time, patience, and a willingness to endure the discomfort of being alone. It is in these moments of solitude that the seeds of greatness are planted, nurtured, and ultimately brought to fruition. The legacy of those who have walked alone serves as a reminder that solitude is not a limitation, but a gateway to deeper understanding. It is a path that demands courage, resilience, and an unbreakable spirit. It is a journey that is often difficult but ultimately transformative. The greatest minds do not fear walking alone. They embrace it, knowing that within the silence of solitude lies the power to change the world. In the constant movement of life where people are always chasing something, goals, recognition, relationships, and endless responsibilities, clarity remains elusive. The mind is constantly occupied, shifting from one thought to another, reacting to situations and absorbing distractions from every direction. It rarely gets a moment of stillness, a pause long enough to reflect, to observe, and to truly understand. Yet, it is in these rare moments of absolute stillness that real clarity emerges. Clarity is not something that can be forced. It arises naturally when the noise within is silenced. It is not found in endless analysis or in the overconsumption of information, but in the ability to sit with oneself in complete awareness. The human mind is like the surface of a lake. When disturbed by movement, it becomes chaotic, rippling with distortions that make it impossible to see beneath. Thoughts, emotions, and distractions act as the winds that agitate these waters, preventing any deeper reflection. But when the lake is still, its surface becomes like a mirror, reflecting everything with absolute clarity. The same is true for the mind. When one finds stillness, true uninterrupted stillness, insights emerge effortlessly. Questions that once seemed overwhelming are answered without struggle. Decisions become clear without anxiety, and understanding deepens without force. It is not that solutions suddenly appear out of nowhere, but rather that they were always there, hidden beneath the turbulence of an overactive mind. In today's world, where speed and productivity are celebrated, stillness is often seen as a waste of time. People believe that clarity comes from doing more, reading more, thinking more, planning more. But they fail to realize that excessive movement often leads to more confusion. The mind becomes like a tangled thread, each action pulling it tighter, making it more difficult to unravel. When one finally stops, lets go, and allows everything to settle, the knots begin to loosen on their own. The effort to force clarity often becomes the very thing that obstructs it. True understanding is not achieved through excessive thinking, but through the ability to observe without interference. There is a reason why some of the most profound discoveries and moments of inspiration occur when one is not actively seeking them. A scientist struggling with a problem finds the answer not in the laboratory, but in a moment of quiet contemplation. A writer facing creative block suddenly finds words flowing effortlessly after a walk in nature. A person burdened with a difficult decision gains sudden insight in the silence of early morning. These moments of realization do not come from actively forcing an answer, but from allowing the mind to settle into stillness, where the truth can reveal itself without effort. Stillness is not simply the absence of movement. It is the presence of awareness. It is not about doing nothing, but about being completely present in the moment, allowing the mind to rest in its natural state without agitation. In this state, one becomes a witness to their own thoughts rather than being controlled by them. Instead of getting lost in endless inner dialogue, one begins to see thoughts for what they are, temporary waves passing through consciousness. This separation creates space, and in that space, clarity arises. Many people live their lives in a state of mental restlessness, always looking for the next thing to occupy their minds, never allowing themselves the stillness needed to understand life deeply. They move from one distraction to another, believing that clarity will come from external sources, advice from others, validation from society, or the accumulation of knowledge. But clarity is an internal phenomenon, something that can only be experienced when one stops running and simply allows themselves to be. In stillness, the mind stops grasping for answers and instead begins to receive them effortlessly. The ancient wisdom of many traditions has long emphasized the importance of stillness as a means to access deeper knowledge. Whether it is monks, sitting in meditation, sages retreating into solitude, or philosophers spending long hours in quiet contemplation, the pursuit of truth has always been linked to the ability to remain still. This is not a coincidence. The greatest wisdom does not come from intellectual debate or the accumulation of facts, but from a state of pure awareness, where one is able to perceive reality as it is without distortion. Stillness is also a powerful tool for emotional clarity. When one is constantly engaged in activity, emotions are often suppressed, ignored, or acted upon impulsively. But in stillness, emotions are fully experienced, observed, and understood. Instead of reacting blindly, one gains the ability to respond with awareness. This shift from reaction to response is what brings true clarity in dealing with life's challenges. Instead of being controlled by fleeting emotions, one begins to see the patterns that govern them, allowing for a deeper understanding of oneself and the world. The idea of stillness is often misunderstood as passivity, but in reality, it is one of the most powerful states a person can cultivate. It is the foundation from which true action arises. Actions taken from a place of stillness are precise, effective, and free from unnecessary struggle. Just as an archer must be completely still before releasing the arrow, a person must find inner stillness before making important decisions. solving complex problems, or achieving mastery in any field. The most impactful movements come from a place of absolute stillness. The ability to embrace stillness is not something that happens overnight. It requires patience, practice, and a willingness to be with oneself without distraction. In the beginning, the mind resists, craving movement and stimulation. It will try to convince one that being still is uncomfortable, unproductive, or even pointless. But those who persist will find that beyond the initial discomfort lies a state of clarity that cannot be found anywhere else. The deeper one sinks into stillness, the more the mind begins to function in a completely different way, sharper, clearer, and more aligned with reality. In stillness, life itself becomes more vivid. The senses awaken, allowing one to experience the world with a level of depth that is impossible in a state of constant agitation. A simple breeze feels different. A moment of silence becomes profound. And even the most ordinary aspects of life take on new meaning. Stillness does not separate one from life, it deepens the connection to it. It allows one to move through the world with a sense of presence that transforms even the simplest moments into something extraordinary. The modern world may encourage movement, distraction, and endless activity, but those who seek true clarity understand the necessity of stillness. It is only when the waters of the mind become calm that one can see to the depths of their own consciousness. It is only in the absence of mental noise that the most profound insights can emerge. The greatest wisdom, the deepest creativity, and the clearest vision do not come from excessive effort, but from the willingness to be still and allow them to arise naturally. In the noise of everyday life, people are constantly engaging with the external world, conversations, responsibilities, ambitions, distractions, and endless streams of information. The mind is always occupied reacting to what is happening around it, shaped by opinions, expectations, and experiences. There is hardly a moment to pause, to turn inward, to reflect. Yet in the rare moments when all the noise fades away, when one is alone in complete silence, something profound happens. In that space of stillness, free from distractions, a person finally meets themselves. Not the version shaped by society, not the identity they project to the world, but the purest essence of who they are. Silence is not merely the absence of sound. It is the presence of awareness. When external noise disappears, internal noise becomes more noticeable. At first, this can be unsettling. The mind, so used to being occupied, begins to flood with thoughts, memories, worries, fears, unresolved emotions. Many avoid silence for this very reason. They fear what they might find in the quiet. They fill their time with distractions, seeking noise and stimulation to avoid facing themselves. But if one has the patience to sit through this initial discomfort, to allow thoughts to settle, they begin to discover something extraordinary. Beneath all the noise, beyond all the mental clutter, lies a deeper presence, one's true self, unclouded, untouched by external influences. In silence, self-awareness deepens. Without the influence of others, one begins to see clearly why they act the way they do, what truly motivates them, where their fears come from, and what their heart truly desires. In daily life, people are often caught up in the roles they play, the professional, the parent, the friend, the achiever. They get so identified with these roles that they forget who they are beyond them. But in silence, these identities fade, and what remains is something far more authentic. A person begins to realize that they are not merely their thoughts, not just their emotions, not only the sum of their past experiences. They are something deeper, something vast, something far more profound than they ever imagined. Silence reveals truths that are otherwise hidden. Many of the struggles people face are not due to external circumstances, but due to a lack of clarity within themselves. They chase things they do not truly want, hold on to beliefs that no longer serve them, and make choices that lead to suffering. But when everything becomes quiet, clarity arises naturally. The answers that seemed elusive suddenly become clear. The confusion that felt overwhelming dissolves. One begins to see their own patterns, the ways they sabotage themselves, the fears that hold them back, the desires that are not truly their own but inherited from others. In silence, there is no escape from oneself, And in that direct confrontation, transformation begins. True healing happens in silence. The mind and body carry layers of unprocessed emotions, stress, and past wounds, but these do not always get the attention they need. When one is constantly moving, constantly engaged, they suppress these emotions, rather than fully experiencing them. But in silence, nothing is suppressed. The things buried deep within begin to surface. Old memories arise. Past pain reveals itself. Emotions long ignored begin to be felt. At first, this can be difficult, even painful. But if one allows themselves to sit with these emotions, to feel them without resistance, a remarkable thing happens. They begin to dissolve. Healing does not come from avoiding pain but from facing it completely, and silence provides the space for that healing to occur. Silence is the gateway to intuition. The mind is often filled with endless analysis, weighing pros and cons, seeking advice, overthinking every decision. But the deepest wisdom does not come from logical calculations. It comes from an inner knowing, an intuitive intelligence that speaks in subtle ways. This intuition is always present, always guiding, but it is drowned out by the constant noise of the thinking mind. In silence, the mind quiets, and intuition is finally heard. Decisions become clearer, choices feel more aligned, and a deep sense of trust in oneself begins to develop. Silence also changes one's relationship with fear. Much of what people fear is not real. It exists only in the mind, projected into the future, shaped by past experiences. But when one sits in silence, observing these fears without reacting to them, something powerful happens. The fears begin to lose their grip. One realizes that most of the things they worry about are mere illusions, that they are not as fragile as they once believed, that they can face whatever comes with a sense of inner stability. Silence becomes a training ground for resilience. It teaches a person to remain unmoved by external circumstances, to find strength in their own presence, rather than in the fleeting reassurances of the world. Creativity flourishes in silence. Many of the greatest works of art, music, and literature were born from moments of deep stillness. When the mind is constantly stimulated, there is no space for originality. Creativity is not something that can be forced. It arises naturally when the mind is clear, when it is free from distractions, when it is allowed to wander into unknown territories. Silence creates that space. It allows ideas to emerge, insights to unfold, and new perspectives to be seen. It is no surprise that some of the most visionary minds in history have spent long periods in solitude, allowing silence to nurture their creativity. Even relationships are transformed through silence. People often believe that communication is the key to deep connection. And while that is true, there is another, more subtle form of connection that arises in silence. When two people can sit together in complete silence and still feel a deep sense of understanding, that is true intimacy. Silence removes the need for words, for explanations, for constant validation. It allows for presence, for a pure connection beyond thoughts and language. It is in silence that one truly sees another, not through their words, but through their being. Silence is not something to be feared, but embraced. It is not a void, but a presence. Not an emptiness, but a fullness that cannot be found in noise. In silence, the deepest aspects of oneself are revealed. One begins to meet themselves, not as they wish to be, not as the world expects them to be, but as they truly are. It is an encounter that can be both humbling and liberating, challenging and transformative. In that meeting, illusions are stripped away, masks fall off, and what remains is something pure, something vast, something unshakable. It is in silence that one finally comes home to themselves. Strength is often misunderstood. People believe that strength is about power, about dominance, about external displays of resilience. But true strength is not found in physical force nor in the approval of others. It is not in titles, status, or wealth. It is something far deeper, something unshakable, something that cannot be taken away. True strength comes from within, and it is built in moments of solitude, in the quiet of isolation where there is no one to impress, no validation to seek, and no external force to rely on. It is in these moments when all distractions are removed that a person truly discovers what they are made of. In isolation, there is no applause. There is no audience. There is no one to witness the struggle. It is just the individual and their thoughts, their fears, their doubts, and their deepest insecurities. This is why many people avoid solitude, because in the absence of external validation, they are forced to confront themselves. But for those who embrace it, isolation becomes a forge, a place where raw human potential is tempered into something unbreakable. Without the noise of the world, without the influence of others, one begins to cultivate something rare, inner strength, the kind that does not waver in the face of adversity, the kind that does not seek approval, the kind that remains steady, no matter the circumstances. Most people derive their sense of self from their surroundings. They define themselves by their relationships, their social roles, their reputation. But what happens when all of that is stripped away? When there is no one around to reaffirm one's worth? When there is no external structure to lean on? When there is no distraction to numb the discomfort? This is when the real test begins. If a person has built their sense of self solely on external foundations, they crumble in isolation. They feel lost, restless, afraid. But those who have done the inner work, those who have faced themselves in silence, find that they do not collapse in solitude. They expand. They realize that they were never dependent on the outside world for strength. The power was always within them, waiting to be discovered. Isolation is not about loneliness. It is not about disconnection. It is about deepening one's connection to oneself. In solitude, a person learns to stand on their own, to trust their own instincts, to find stability within rather than searching for it in others. The greatest warriors, the greatest thinkers, the greatest creators, all of them spend time in solitude, not because they had no other choice, but because they understood that strength is built when there is no one else to rely on. When one is left alone with their own mind, they either become their own worst enemy or their greatest ally. Those who resist solitude fight against themselves, but those who embrace it become unstoppable. In the modern world, people are constantly surrounded by distractions. Technology, entertainment, social interactions, everything is designed to keep the mind occupied. Rarely does one get a moment to simply be with themselves, to sit in their own presence without reaching for a phone, a conversation, or an external source of stimulation. But true strength is not built in comfort. It is built in discomfort. It is built in those moments when one resists the urge to escape, when they sit with their thoughts, their emotions, their fears, and face them directly. It is in those moments of confrontation that transformation happens. Isolation teaches self-sufficiency. In the presence of others, it is easy to lean on external support, to seek advice, to be carried by the momentum of a group. But in solitude, there is no one to turn to, no one to carry the burden. A person must find their own answers, must solve their own problems, must navigate their own path. This is where resilience is born. Those who learn to rely on themselves, who learn to trust their own judgment, who learn to be at peace with their own company, develop a kind of strength that cannot be shaken by external circumstances. They become self-contained, unbreakable, independent, not in the superficial sense of avoiding others, but in the deepest sense of being whole within themselves. Isolation also teaches patience. In a world of instant gratification, people have lost the ability to wait, to endure, to persist through difficulty without immediate reward. But in solitude, there is no instant validation. Progress is slow. Growth is subtle. Strength is built over time, not in dramatic moments, but in the quiet persistence of facing oneself every day, refining one's thoughts, mastering one's emotions, and deepening one's understanding of life. Those who can endure isolation without losing themselves emerge with a level of patience and discipline that sets them apart from the rest. Mental toughness is not developed through comfort. It is not developed through constant affirmation. It is developed through struggle, through self-doubt, through facing the darkest parts of oneself and not running away. Isolation provides the perfect environment for this kind of growth. There is no one to distract from the work that needs to be done. There is no one to validate or invalidate one's efforts. It is a direct confrontation with the self, and in that confrontation, true strength is revealed. The greatest leaders, the greatest minds, the most unshakable individuals, none of them were made in comfort. They were made in solitude, in long hours of reflection, in moments of deep struggle where they had no choice but to dig within and find their own strength. They did not seek to escape themselves. They sought to understand themselves, to master themselves, and in doing so, they became unbreakable. Isolation is not a weakness. It is not something to be feared. It is a gift, an opportunity to strip away everything unnecessary, to let go of external dependencies, to discover the immense power that lies within. It is the place where doubts are burned away, where illusions dissolve, where the mind is sharpened and the spirit fortified. It is in these moments alone with oneself that the foundation for true greatness is laid. Creativity is often misunderstood. Many believe it is something that must be forced, something that comes from endless effort, from constantly seeking inspiration, from consuming vast amounts of information. But creativity does not arise from excess. It is not born from a mind that is cluttered, overloaded, or constantly occupied. True creativity, the kind that gives birth to something original, something profound, something timeless, comes from emptiness. It flourishes in the vast open space of a quiet mind, in the stillness where thoughts are not forced but allowed to flow naturally. In modern life, people are always filling their minds, filling them with noise, with distractions, with endless streams of information. They believe that to be creative they must gather more knowledge, more experiences, more ideas. They seek inspiration in external sources, constantly looking outward, hoping to stumble upon something that will ignite their imagination. But the greatest works of art, the most revolutionary ideas, the most profound insights have not come from minds that were cluttered with information. They have come from minds that have embraced emptiness, that have allowed space for creativity to emerge rather than trying to force it. The mind is like a field. If it is constantly filled with weeds, with overgrown vegetation, with things planted at random, nothing significant can grow. But when the field is cleared, when the soil is left open and bare, it becomes fertile ground for something new, something extraordinary. Creativity works the same way. It does not thrive in a mind that is overcrowded, constantly stimulated, endlessly busy. It thrives in a mind that knows how to be still, how to be empty, how to wait patiently for inspiration to arise on its own. Some of the greatest thinkers, artists, and creators in history understood this. They valued solitude. They embraced stillness. They allowed themselves long periods of emptiness where they did not force ideas, but simply let them come. They did not fill every moment with activity, with distractions, with mental clutter. Instead, they created space for their creativity to breathe, to expand, to take shape naturally. This is why many of the most profound ideas and insights do not come in moments of intense effort, but in moments of relaxation, while walking alone, sitting in silence, gazing at the sky. It is in these moments of emptiness that the mind suddenly connects dots that were previously unseen, that ideas emerge seemingly out of nowhere, that true originality is born. But emptiness is something that many people fear. They are uncomfortable with silence, with stillness, with being alone with their own thoughts. They believe that if they are not constantly thinking, working, or consuming information, they are wasting time. They do not realize that in their attempt to be productive, they are suffocating their own creativity. A mind that is always full has no room for something new. A mind that is always occupied has no space for fresh ideas to take root. Creativity needs space. It needs emptiness. It needs moments where there is nothing but pure awareness, where the mind is not cluttered with the weight of expectations, pressure, or distractions. This is why many great artists and inventors have spoken of their greatest ideas coming to them in unexpected moments, when they were doing nothing in particular, when their minds were at rest, when they had let go of the need to create and simply allowed themselves to be. The human brain is not a machine. It does not function best under constant strain. It needs moments of emptiness to reset, to wander freely, to make connections that cannot be made when it is overwhelmed with too much input. Emptiness is not a lack. It is a space of infinite possibility. It is the void from which all creation arises. It is the blank canvas before the first stroke of paint, the silence before the first note of music, the empty page before words begin to flow. Without emptiness, there is no space for something new to emerge. The greatest innovators have always understood this. They did not fear emptiness. They embraced it. They knew that to create something extraordinary, they had to first make space for it. Many people believe that creativity is about effort, about trying harder, about forcing ideas to come. But the truth is that creativity is more about allowing than forcing. It is about stepping back, about quieting the mind, about creating an inner emptiness where something fresh and unexpected can emerge. This is why those who cultivate stillness, who embrace solitude, who allow themselves to experience moments of emptiness without resistance, often find themselves becoming more creative, more insightful, more capable of original thought. Emptiness is not the enemy of creativity. It is its greatest ally. It is the silence that allows music to be heard, the space that allows art to be seen, the pause that allows words to have meaning. Without emptiness, there is no depth, no room for exploration, no possibility of something new coming into existence. Those who understand this no longer fear emptiness. They no longer seek to fill every moment with noise, with distractions, with constant activity. Instead, they learn to welcome those moments of stillness, to trust in the creative power that arises from within when the mind is finally given the space to breathe. Most people have never truly experienced emptiness. They have never allowed themselves to sit in silence, to be alone with their thoughts, to create without the pressure of expectation. But those who do discover something extraordinary, they find that in the absence of noise, their minds begin to work in a completely different way. Ideas emerge effortlessly. Solutions appear without struggle. Creativity flows naturally without resistance. It is not something that needs to be forced. It is something that arises when given the right conditions. The modern world does not encourage emptiness. It encourages constant stimulation, constant distraction, constant filling of the mind with more and more. But those who seek true creativity must go against this pattern. They must learn to embrace the spaces in between, the moments of stillness, the quiet gaps where something new can take form. They must understand that emptiness is not a void to be feared, but a space of pure potential where the greatest ideas, the most profound insights, the deepest creativity can finally take root and flourish. Mastery is often seen as something external, something that comes from years of practice, from relentless discipline, from the accumulation of knowledge and skill. People believe that mastery is about perfecting a craft, about achieving excellence in a field, about surpassing others through sheer effort. But true mastery is not just about what one can do. It is about who one becomes. It is not simply about technique or knowledge, but about depth, about understanding, about transformation. And this kind of mastery does not come from external achievements alone. It comes from within. It is a journey not outward into the world, but inward into the deepest layers of the self. The greatest masters, whether in art, science, philosophy, or spirituality, have all understood this. They did not merely refine their external skills. They refined their own being. They were not just focused on their craft. They were focused on their own minds, their own emotions, their own understanding of life. They knew that true mastery is not about control over something external, but about mastery over oneself. To master anything in the world, one must first master their own thoughts, their own impulses, their own limitations. And this kind of mastery is not achieved through competition or ambition. It is achieved through introspection, through self-awareness, through an unshakable commitment to inner growth. Most people seek mastery in the wrong way. They chase after results, seeking external validation, striving to be recognized for their abilities. They measure their progress by comparison, by looking at where they stand in relation to others. But this is not the path to real mastery. Those who truly excel, those who reach the highest levels of their potential, do not focus on competition. They focus on self-discovery. They understand that their greatest obstacle is not the world outside, but their own mind, their own fears, their own doubts, their own self-imposed limitations. And so rather than looking outward, they turn inward. They embark on the journey within. This journey is not easy. It requires facing oneself in a way that most people avoid. It requires questioning long-held beliefs, dismantling illusions,